very much, Alison. Thank you very much, everyone here, and those who are listening from on outside. And we got the title for Be Outraged, Indignez-vous in French, from Stefan Cassell, who's a mere 93, who played a major role in the UN in the early years of the UN in drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and looking at where Europe in particular and France has got to, he called for young people to really be outraged. His little booklet, and to some extent we've copied the idea of the little booklet, sold 4 million copies. You can go on to Amazon.com and get a copy. So anyway, we haven't done as well as that, but so far, for those of you who can't get it, you can download it. Be Outraged, There Are Alternatives, from the Oxfam website. And I'm pleased to say that although it's only been on the Oxfam website for a few weeks, it's hit the top of the list for the most downloads in May, and it was only put on the Oxfam website on the 20th of May. What does this do? It says there are alternatives. It takes a Keynesian perspective, but it takes a Keynesian perspective of the problems of Europe and Britain to some extent as well, with 3 differences. One, it has a broader perspective, not just get back to growth, but tackle many of the structural problems. It has, secondly, a strong emphasis on international action. And thirdly, for everything we recommend, it gives examples. And the interesting point, especially in the ODI, is that the examples are mostly taken from emerging or developing countries, with the subliminal message, we now need to learn from them, particularly the experience of Asian countries after their 1997-2000 crisis, financial crisis, where they said never again, and implemented regional as well as national actions that have enabled them considerably, not entirely, to avoid the present crisis that is eating up Europe, as we know only too well. I'm going to take you through very quickly some of the key points of Be Outraged, but as you've all got copies or can download them, please look more at it later. Alternative priorities: reducing unemployment, building caring economies as the basis for gender equality, reducing inequality by unashamed policies, transforming finance from bad master to good servant, and supportive international action to make all this possible. Action is needed now and for the future. This is a preview of what Stephanie in a moment is going to elaborate. I'm not going into that because Stephanie will deal with it, but the key point is the idea we couldn't afford it or there is no money. Stephanie will deal with. It's nonsense. Let me come to the issue of gender and care. Keep calm and carry on. And one of the key points we make is that quite apart from the long-run problems of women, there are additional problems in relation to the present crisis. That when the crisis shows difficulties for families, it may be unemployment, it just may be decreasing wages, it's usually left to women to pick up the pieces and to ensure action. It's often called, this is the coping strategies. We've said often it is survival strategies. We say that in relation to employment as well as gender issues and care, we need to make employment creation a top priority, especially for youth. As I hope we all know, it's well over 20% of youth unemployed in Europe, In Spain and Italy, over 50%. Set a target of 5% as a maximum for unemployment. Oh, isn't that idealistic? That was the average level of unemployment in Europe only 5 years ago. Don't tell us these are all absurds. But then, turning more particularly to the gender and to the care issues, Ruth Pearson and Diane Elson, who drafted that part of the booklet, look at the longer run challenges. We need to move in the longer run to a better balance between men and women in ensuring care, not merely care for the young people, but care for a society, as most of Europe is going to become an older society, but for that matter, many developing countries. Public provision of care is a vital need, not an optional extra, and policy makers in many of these areas need to listen more to women and draw more on their experience of coping. The key points brought out here are not illustrated with good examples from developing countries because we couldn't actually find them. I'm sure actually they are there. So we quote the experience of Norway and Sweden, where over 2% of GNP is devoted to support of care, much, much more than in most other countries. Well, bankers' bonuses. I hope that gives you an overview. I don't think we need to give you the statistics, although one favorite one last year, the FTSE 100 CEOs had an extra 49% in bonuses, salaries, and other extras. Civil servants, as I read The Guardian today, had 0. I think they're going to get 1% next year. And of course, those are the privileged, relatively privileged in many cases, not all. And some of the poorest people have actually gone down in income when you allow for inflation, let alone unemployment. One statistic people may not know is that top incomes, which have been brilliantly tracked by Tony Atkinson, Professor Atkinson, Oxford, and a couple of others, we give the references, top incomes in Germany and France are considerably lower than top incomes in US, UK, and it's worth again realizing none of these things are inevitable. But what we concentrate on is how to reduce inequalities. And one of our colleagues, Andrea Cornea, has done a lot of work on Latin America, where in the last 10 years or so, the Gini coefficient, which is a measure of inequality of incomes, has been considerably, significantly reduced. And these are the sort of policies that have been behind that, particularly in Brazil, but also recently in countries such as Thailand, Malawi, Argentina, Chile, Malaysia, Venezuela, Bolivia. Making diminishing of inequalities a clear focus of policy, bringing inequality into macro policies, making sure they're pro-poor and employment focused, tax systems made progressive, minimum wage legislation that's implemented, sustainable social services, cash transfers for vulnerable groups. I was fascinated when I went to Thailand. As their part of the process of recovery, they gave cash incomes, handouts to pensioners. On what grounds? On the grounds that the pensioners would spend it at once and therefore would lead to stimulus. In Costa Rica, the cash stimulus that they used there was different. They had conditional cash transfers to poorer families, providing they kept their girls in secondary school. For Costa Rica, it's not primary schools, it's secondary schools. This is what we can learn from developing countries. You made this problem. You helped clear it up. Thank you, Oxfam, for that lovely cartoon. Making finance a good master, not a bad servant. Stephanie's going to come to that, so we come to the global solutions for global problems. I fear that cartoon, it's not quite right for the G20 in Mexico today. They're all admitting the global problem, but I think they're putting in their heads in the sand when it comes to the solutions. Well, there's the regional and international action. Francis is going to deal with that, so I've reached the end. There's no need for you all to become economists, although if you are, I hope you will really take seriously the fact that there are alternatives. I really commend to you the latest book by Paul Krugman, End This Depression Now. Absolutely brilliant, especially because it takes on all the arguments why this isn't possible. The longer we wait, the more people suffer. No need for everyone to be an expert on all the details, but please, everyone needs to demand action now to implement alternatives. If I may end with my one favorite quote from the brilliant economist Joan Robinson. The main reason for studying economics is not to be hoodwinked by other economists. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.